Hello, and welcome to another episode of Self Improvement for Women. I am your host, Hope Long, and today I have Dr. Asha Prasad with us. She is amazing. We had the best conversation the last time we spoke, but she is many things, right? So she is an author, she's a practitioner, and she's also a podcaster. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she's really into mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, right? And this show, we talk a lot about that on here. So, Dr. Asha, I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much, Hope. I'm so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation based on our last time that we chatted with each other. I'm looking forward to today.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
The last time that we spoke, we got really deep into what it looks like, to be well in all your areas, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today a little bit. But I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit on like your path and how you came into this and how this has become, your thing, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. You know what? I would probably say that early on, I mean, even as a child, I was always interested in like the connection of things, like not just looking at one aspect of something, but looking at the interconnection. And so growing up, I grew up in the States, but with my Eastern background, my family's originally from India. There was always this East and West kind of integration that was happening in our household a lot. So it really taught me a lot about the more spiritual side of life and the emotional, mental, like looking at things more dynamically, looking at it not just for what you see on the surface, but looking deeper. So growing up with that and always learning how to integrate and kind of make the connection between East and West allowed me to kind of, as I went on to college and, started on my own journey, kind of getting more exposed to, life basically. And so what happened was probably about 15 years ago, I found myself in a huge transition. I had lost quite a few loved ones that had passed away suddenly. And I found at that time, I was doing really, really well outwardly. Like if anybody were to see me from like the surface, they'd be like, oh, well, she really has it all together and everything's going well. But inside, I was just crumbling inside. I had lost my way to a certain degree. And looking back on it, I can say that I really was missing that connection. I had disconnected from what I had grown up knowing was important. And that was really about the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And so it was through that journey that allowed me my own personal transformation and professional transformation. And it led me to be able to help people now today. I mean, I've been a practitioner for many years. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I've always treated people holistically, but it just really helped me as I went through my own journey. It helped me take that to a much deeper level for people that I was also seeing in the practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and with that being said, so you mentioned the disconnect and the differences between East and
Right.
West and how we kind of do things. And I think from my perspective, I view Eastern culture as deeply spiritual, right?
Yes.
Compared to me growing up,
Right.
spirituality, not that important in my house.
Right.
It was kind of just like, okay, yeah, you can be spiritual, but this is what's really important, right? So there
Exactly.
wasn't a lot of value placed on religion or those kinds of things
Right.
growing up. But as I've gotten older, and I've done my own research, which I think has also helped too. Is like I had the interest in doing the research on, energetically, like what do I believe in, right? What do I
Exactly.
think is bigger than me, right?
Right.
And how does that play into my day-to-day life? So when you speak a little bit for us on the differences that you saw in Western versus Eastern culture.
I mean, I think the biggest difference was that in general, the Western world is more oriented towards the external, and the Eastern world is more geared towards the internal. And
Mhm.
the beauty of both of them is that you can integrate them and learn to really integrate them and utilize them to be the best version of yourself. But so many times we end up swaying one way or another, and that's where we get out of balance. So I would say that's like the biggest difference that I saw, growing up. But even now, that's what really, but it was interesting, Hope, because one of the things that I found was sometimes on our life's journey we have to kind of the pendulum has to swing way far on one side in order for us to swing back to the middle, to be able to realize that we can integrate both of them. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be both and.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I found myself. And I would say that that's probably, with you speaking about being brought up with in the Western world, I mean, how much was emphasized on the external versus the internal,
Yeah. Quite a bit.
right?
Quite a bit. Almost
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, so with that, you kind of took it and ran with it. And I know you said, you went through some grief and stuff. And like everybody goes through the grief process. Like we all lose people that we care about.
Right.
And I think it has so many women that I've spoken with, it
Mhm.
changes them usually in a very profound way, especially
Yes.
losing like a mother or a
Yes.
father. Like the people that I've spoken with, I still have both of my parents living, thank
Mhm.
goodness. But when you lose somebody, it changes your perspective on what's important in your current life and the time that you have with it, right? Because then you realize you're not
Okay.
infallible, right?
Right.
You're subject to death just like everyone else.
Exactly. Exactly.
So then the importance becomes on how do you feel, like, or do you feel well about your life, like are you happy in X, Y, and Z areas? And I know for you, when we spoke the last time, again, we kind of broke it down into like the mental, the emotional, and the
Right.
spiritual, and how that looks as you integrate all of them together,
Right.
right? And so one of those things that we kind of touched on was our limiting beliefs that we carry around with us,
Right.
and how that's stopping us in our current life from
Mhm.
progressing and being all that we can be as human beings, right?
Exactly.
So what kind of work have you done with your clients on like
Mhm.
limiting beliefs and kind of breaking that mental emotional
Right.
barrier, I guess I
Mhm.
would say. I don't know if it's a barrier. um
Yeah, it can be perceived as a barrier because we feel like we're stuck by them, and it can really keep us kind of where we are. I mean, that's what the limiting beliefs kind of create, these boundaries that our perspective can only go that far and no further unless somebody can help you shed light on that. And that was one of the things that, as I was going through that period of time where I was really in a lot of grief, a lot of people didn't realize that inside I was just kind of breaking down. I realized at that point that it was time for a big move. That's how I ended up moving, taking that leap of faith and moving to a different continent, which I am right now in Europe. And it was through that process that I learned that, what you put your mind to, what you really believe is exactly what you can achieve in your life. And I'm living proof of that. And so what happened is that when I work with my clients is I really like to break it down for them to find out, what are they really feeling on a regular basis? What are they really thinking about on a regular basis? And sometimes we can think that, oh yeah, I think positively. I think, I speak to myself lovingly. But then whenever you really do some exercises to really hone in on what's going on, you'd be surprised how much negativity is going on, even for
yeah.
all of us as human beings. There's a part of our brain that just automatically filters the negativity a little bit easier than the positivity, unless we are doing things to re-emphasize that positivity and be able to break down those barriers or their limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
It's
I
and it's quite
literally
interesting. Yeah.
It's funny because I was literally having a conversation with somebody this morning
Uh-huh.
about how our brains speak to us.
Yes.
um and it's not always a blatant negative thing,
Right.
right? It's not always like, you can't do this, you'll never accomplish
Right.
it.
Right.
Sometimes it just looks like, well, maybe now is not the best time.
Exactly.
Like it's just a
Exactly.
sly little conversation that you're having that you don't realize, like
Yes.
it's feeding into you putting a restriction on yourself, right?
Exactly. And it kind of can tend to keep us small. Like, okay, well, I'm not doing this because the timing isn't right. I'm
Mhm.
not doing this because, oh, well, you know what, in 6 months it'll be much better. You know, and the thing about it is that that's kind of the fear creeping up and saying, don't, you know, don't get out of your comfort zone. Don't go beyond what you know. And that is a natural thing that I think as human beings we have in our brains, but it is about, we can push beyond those. We can step beyond those with some practices, with some attention on that. And that's one of the biggest things that I work with a lot of my clients on, because whether they have physical ailments, physical pain, like, because I am a practitioner as well, whether they come with actual physical manifestation of something, or whether it is something that's just completely mentally stressing them out, they go hand in hand. You cannot take one without the other. And this is why it's so important to make sure that we're paying attention to our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves all at the same time, and make sure that we're like, well, we have wellness in all areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
I know that, for some people, when they have things like chronic pain,
Right.
or, they've just been living with disease for so long,
Exactly.
mentally shifting can make a huge difference in the amount
Exactly.
of pain that you physically feel, which
Yes.
blows my mind, because I've read the articles and I see these videos
Right.
and stuff, and I'm like, how is that even possible? The
Yeah.
amount of influence that our minds and our emotions have over our physical bodies is
Yes.
overwhelming. Like, it
It
is
is, it is
crazy.
profound. It is, it really is profound. And once you open up to that and you start looking at it and start realizing that, hey, wait a second, there's so much power. I mean, you know, you can have a terminal illness and still be very conscious and aware and very positive and help yourself in a healing process, whether it is fully possible on the physical level at that time, or even if it's on the mental, emotional, and spiritual level. There is so much healing, and that can really, that triggers certain hormones and certain production of enzymes and those kinds of things in the body that reduce the pain. And it has been proven. I mean, you know, you've read the studies on it, and it's really, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things that for everybody, and that's one of the things that I saw after being a practitioner for many, many years now, how that can shift for somebody when you open up their minds to, hey, wait a second, I can actually do much more for myself, for the good of myself, than any pill or any, you know, any medication can do. I mean, there is a time and place for that, obviously,
Right.
but there's so much healing that we can initiate for ourselves by working in this way.
Yeah. And to speak
Yeah.
to the alternative, your thoughts
Mhm.
can also make you sick.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
excessive stress,
Yes,
excessive worry and anxiety is
exactly.
detrimental to your physical body, because
Yes.
you're in this state, right? Like, you're in this what, fight or flight
Fight or flight,
kind of
exactly.
state,
Yes.
and prolonged, being in a state like that for a prolonged amount of time, um it's not going to have a positive effect on your body. you know
Exactly, exactly. I mean, and I mean, that's the thing, like we have, our nervous system has like two, if we want to say two kind of separate sections of the nervous system. And we're talking about the autonomic nervous system is what you're talking about right now. And you have the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is really rest and heal, basically. And when you're overstimulating the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, and you're constantly under a lot of stress, you're in negative situations, you're speaking negatively, your self-talk is negative, you're going to be triggering that on a physiological level. Heart rate's going to go up, blood pressure is going to go up, you can't sleep very well. You know, it really, you're prone to, you know, unhealthy habits of eating and, you know, sleeping, all these kinds of things. If you're not stimulating your parasympathetic system on a regular basis through different a variety of ways, then you're constantly getting out of balance. And when that takes over, it's going to make you physically ill.
right.
It really does have that physical, because your body believes exactly what your mind tells it.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very and that's something that I didn't know for a while, until I got into
Right.
kind of like the law of attraction and like how energy works and those
Right.
kinds of things. But it really does boil down to what you think about, you bring about, because
Exactly. That's
your
so true.
mind is the most powerful thing on the planet. It is more
Exactly.
powerful than anything, like a jet engine fuel. It's more powerful than that, right? And
Exactly.
we don't give ourselves enough credit withholding this amount of power, right? And so we
It's
kind of
so
go through
true.
we go through the motions every day. We get up, we go to work, we come home, we do the laundry, we feed the kids, we're going to bed. Like, and that's what we do,
Exactly.
right? And
Exactly. No, but it's so true. And you know what I think also, Hope, is that what makes it even more powerful is when you learn how to connect the mind and the heart, the mind and the body, the mind and the soul, whatever way you want to word it. I think that integration point, because that's when you really, really step into your empowered state. And basically anything's possible at
yeah,
that point.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dive in then with all of that prefacing our conversation. Um,
Right.
let's dive into conscious and subconscious, and
Hmm.
then our limiting beliefs that we carry around with us, because
Right.
we all have them.
Absolutely.
It's not like some people just walk around and there's sunshine and roses and everything's
No.
perfect in their world. Okay, let's
No.
be real. We're all, subject to being human.
Exactly.
So we all have different limiting beliefs, and again, we kind of talked about how they can be, kind of sneaky.
Right.
But there's subconscious and then conscious limiting beliefs, and
Right.
there is a difference here. So if you could dive into that for us just a
Yes.
little bit and kind of give us some background on that.
Definitely. So we have, the subconscious and the conscious part of the brain. So subconscious is really, it's kind of like a sponge. I tend to think of the subconscious is constantly there, soaking up everything, taking in all the information. And especially like whenever we're children, probably till about the age of 6 or 7, we literally are like a sponge. So we're just taking everything in, and our filtering system doesn't work as well. So we can't really determine what is good, what is bad, what is positive, what is negative. We just take it all in as the truth. Okay. So about 95% of our thoughts and that get triggered are in our subconscious. Now, our subconscious mind, it has a wealth of knowledge. If you compare it to a computer, it's kind of like your operating system, like everything that has everything saved in it. You don't have to really think about it consciously of how to make it work. You turn it on, the few things that you need to do. Whereas our conscious is what we are taking in with awareness, that
Mhm.
we are really aware of what is happening. Now, a lot of times what happens is we get information coming in, it gets filtered very quickly through the RAS, which is the reticulating articular system. I don't want to get too technical with you, but the thing is that the activity system, basically it gets filtered through there, and then it kind of gets into the safety and survival mode. It gets translated into that, or it gets translated and saved as, something that's calming or peaceful.
Yeah.
So just to give you an example of how that works. So like, for example, if we're sitting here calmly, something happens, an alarm goes off. We are going to get, our subconscious is probably going to trigger something on a subconscious level that says, there's danger. We need to get in fight or flight. We have to get out. We have to flee. Heart rate goes up. We immediately go out. Now, whenever we go out to a safe spot, at that time, consciously, we should be able to say to ourselves, oh, gosh, everything is over. We are safe. We are sound. At that point, either our parasympathetic nervous system is getting stimulating to say, you can calm down, you can relax, it's okay, or we're going to stay still on, so to speak.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, this is what happens in our life. We get bombarded by 10, 15, 20, 100 different alarms at the same time, and we don't have a chance to recover, and we stay in that. So, this is how it gets saved in our memory system, in our operating system, our subconscious, and actually dictates how our life goes,
Yeah.
how we operate in our life, how we show up to our life.
Yeah. Like, okay, so our subconscious, it's the main goal for our subconscious is to keep us safe, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
when we are, trying new things, maybe we decided, like even something just so silly, like
Hmm.
maybe we want to take up volleyball. I don't know.
Right.
But
Right.
even in like the silliest of things, consciously we're like, oh, that looks really fun. Subconsciously,
Yeah,
you remember one time when you were like 6 years old and you got hit in the
exactly.
face with that volleyball. And
Exactly.
now your subconscious says, I don't think that's a good idea.
Exactly.
And
And it,
yeah,
exactly. And it triggers that response and it keeps you from doing it. And also with that hope, maybe you didn't experience getting hit in the face, but maybe someone told you
yeah.
it's so dangerous to play volleyball. You're going to get hit, you're going to get hurt. Be careful. And then we're always in alert mode and it gets triggered
Mhm.
at that point in time.
Yeah. And it's so, I know it sounds silly, like the volleyball situation, but we do this
We
with
do this.
really stuff that could change our lives, like starting a
Exactly.
business, starting that relationship with someone,
Exactly.
getting married, making those big decisions. Sometimes we need to kind of evaluate, okay, what are my thoughts? And then also, what am I thinking like subconsciously that's making me think this thought? Like what has
Exactly.
happened or what have I observed or seen or heard
Right.
that could be swaying my conscious thought right now, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
we risks are scary, right? And we want to be safe.
They are. They are. The risks are scary, but we also have a tendency to gravitate towards risk as human beings because we're curious.
Yeah.
We're curious beings. We want the adventure. We want to see the unknown, but it's those limiting beliefs that get triggered. Like one of the ones that I see a lot, especially like whenever you're talking about starting a business or even entering a relationship, the belief of I don't know how to do it
Mhm.
is one of those that people very rarely will admit because of this fear of how it's going to look, how it's going to be perceived, and they really have never even identified that as a limiting belief.
Yeah.
They've been masking it and trying to cover it up and trying to, you know, kind of fake it till you make it kind of thing. And it's okay to get into practice to that fake it till you make it. I think, well, you know what? At some point in time, you're going to have to be confronted with that because it's just it's not sustainable at that point.
Right. Right. Right.
Right.
But and like, and speaking to that a little bit, like my mother, she's older, right? She's
Mhm.
almost, she's in her 70s, but she
Right.
never wrote a book. And she really wanted to be a writer. She
Yeah.
really wanted to write this book. It was
Right.
going to be a book about squirrels for kids and it was
Oh
going to be
wow.
really cute, right?
Yeah.
And I always ask her, I'm like, why didn't you write this book? Why don't you write it now? She goes,
Mhm.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
And I said, you
Exactly.
just start writing. Like to me, it's clear as day. Just
Exactly.
start writing and then go from there. Then you'll figure out, the publishing side and all that
Right.
stuff that comes with it. But you got to start, right? And so I'm like
Right.
very much an action taker. And
Right.
I just, it drives me crazy that she wanted to do this. And then she just,
Right.
don't know how. Oh, I'm too old now. Oh, I'm,
Right.
all these things. And I look at her and I'm like, those are just limiting beliefs. Like,
Exactly.
if you just take the inspired action and just start, you can probably
Exactly.
figure it out on your way because we're very good at that, right? We're very good at figuring things out
Absolutely.
on the way.
Absolutely. And we're also good at attracting people to us
Yeah.
that will help us along the way. It's all about collaboration in this world. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, no, I'm doing it all alone. There's really nothing that we do alone. I mean, truly, truly. Of course, the action, the inspired action has to come from us. But you know what? Whenever we need help, I mean, think about how many times in your life you've always been supported. There's always been whether it's an email or whether it's a phone call or you run into somebody or you overhear a conversation where somebody just has the answer for you and you're like, wow, you know what, we're always being supported. And it's about trusting that, and that can be quite challenging for some people,
Mhm.
especially if they have a belief that I can't trust anybody or no one's going to help me.
Yeah.
Then that's a really tough one.
Yeah.
They have to identify that
Yeah.
and make peace
There's
with that.
tons and tons of limiting beliefs out there,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So when as we're, and again, I had this conversation this morning. Again, this show is all about self-improvement. So if you are
Right.
already watching this, you are well on your way. And now you have an awareness, at least some kind of awareness about your thought process and how your brain works, because I've had so many episodes similar to this. But as we are kind of, in this watching this battle now, right? We
Mhm.
have this awareness. So we're watching our battle. We're watching the
Right.
subconscious and we're watching the conscious. kind of duke it out, right? And like how
Right.
they interact. How can we navigate through this? What do
Hmm.
we need to implement in our lives to be able to do the hard, scary things, jump over that limiting belief or break through that limiting
Right.
belief, to get to the other side, right?
That's a really great question, Hope. And one of the things that I think is like one of the best places I find to start is to first start looking at what you can find gratitude and what you can be grateful for in your life right here and right now, no matter how terrible of a situation you may be in, or it may seem like. There is always something that we can be grateful for. And what this does, practicing gratitude and gratefulness, will help you start to shift your own process, your own thought process to a more positive, to look at the glass half full rather than half empty. And it's such an important aspect of being able to shift these limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Because when you start to be grateful, so like, for example, when you were using the example of your mother, for example, it's like if she were to shift and be like, wow, I'm so thankful that I have this fantastic idea, that I have this idea for this book, that I have that, whatever, anything that she can find. And it may take some time. I've worked with people over the years that have had a very difficult time accessing that gratitude within, because they've never looked at their life like that before.
Right.
But it's one of those things that I highly, highly recommend. That would be the first thing that I would recommend.
Yeah.
It's to
I,
practice gratitude.
and I think something that like, and I've talked to my mom about this,
Right.
but like one of the things that, I tell her, when she was like trying to shift she's been trying to do better, right? And to like to
Hmm.
change her perspective on things. And one of the things I tell her, okay, so you don't know what to be grateful for. Well, like she's like, well, yeah, but I mean, like, I'm grateful for you kids, and I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for that.
Right.
I'm like, yeah. I was like, so
Exactly.
sit with that for just a minute. Like, just
Exactly.
take 2 minutes, literally 120 seconds. Sit
Yeah.
with how you feel about your kids.
Exactly.
And like, you will notice the trajectory of your day is going to change just from 120 seconds of sitting with, oh my God, I made this person, and this person is doing this now. And like,
Exactly.
they said this nice thing. And because it seems really simple. But it just is that
It
simple.
is. I mean, it is, what, and it is true. What that does is it helps us it opens up on an energetic level, it opens up our heart energy.
Yes.
Okay. And it opens up also our creativity, our creative mind. And so what happens is in practicing gratitude, and you can have, I love to keep a gratitude journal. In fact, every single day, before I go to bed and whenever I first wake up in the morning, I write down at least 10 things that I'm grateful for. And a lot of times ends up being kind of a journal exercise, because I end up writing a little bit about why I'm grateful for certain people, certain things, or whatever. And what that does is it opens up the creativity centers, the energy centers, and the heart centers. So you can actually be motivated and inspired to take action, maybe on a project that you've been contemplating, or
Yeah.
maybe on something that you had no idea. You're like, oh my God, I'm so inspired now to do this. It starts to open that up for people once you start practicing on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
inspired action. And again, I've said this before too, but like if you look at people who are very successful, or
Hmm.
you just look at somebody that you really admire,
Right.
um, they are in their position, and this is true for every scenario. They are
Right.
in the position they're in. They're successful at what they do. They're in
Mhm.
this great relationship because they took inspired action.
Exactly.
That's why they're
Yeah.
there.
That's why
Um,
they're there.
and then
Yes.
how they got there
Yeah.
is by being intentional, right? So they were
Exactly.
intentionally, you know, bringing that into their life in some way or another. They were
Yeah.
intentionally practicing gratitude to open their heart, right? They
Exactly.
were intentionally shifting their mindset and perception to be
Right.
able to receive all the good. And it's just crazy. Like it seems very simple because it really is. What's
Right.
not simple is sitting, trying to change from a Z to an A. You can't do it like that, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
But it does, like, it gets gradual and it gets progressive. And the progressive stuff, like as you're watching yourself grow, is actually like more motivating, right? Because
Exactly. I mean,
like when you, let me ask you this. So you started
Yes.
your gratitude journal, and then did you ever go back and read it like 6 months
Yes.
later and be like, wow, I have changed so
Yes.
much?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love about, I'm a big journaler, whether it's gratitude journal and just a regular journal. I love to be able to see the growth because it motivates me, because I'm just like, wow, look at how much that has shifted and changed. And it is a good meter, to be able to see exactly where you've been. And it kind of keeps it, I always look at it as, you know what, we're on this journey. It's never about the destination. It's about just really enjoying the journey. And these kinds of things, these kinds of practices on a daily basis help you enjoy it even more. But it's so true. It's so true. You can see the changes. I go back to journals that I was writing in, even 6, 7, 10 years ago. And it's so amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I can remember who that person was, but I'm like, oh, there's so much transformation that's happened.
And we don't give ourselves credit for
Yes.
growing ever. Like we never ever take the time. Well, I'm not gonna say never ever, but it seems like we never
Right.
take the time to sit down and think about who we were 5 years ago.
That's
Because
so true.
we're very busy people. We're all very busy, right? And so we
Absolutely.
don't take that time to evaluate in the ways that we've grown. Like the
Right.
person that I am today is nowhere near the person that I was 5 years ago. Like
Right.
I have done a total 180. And I
Right.
try to remember these things. And I also journal. I do gratitude every day.
Right.
And so while I'm practicing these things and I'm brushing my teeth and I'm being grateful, I'm
Right.
also like, you know what? 5 years ago, I never would have been grateful for this. That's really weird,
Exactly.
but I feel the gratitude too. So that's part of it, in
It
your
is.
energy. And so, yeah. So again, navigating that subconscious and conscious,
Right.
battle, um, your awareness is huge, right?
That is a huge thing. I mean, I think that that's really where it starts. You have to be aware of what's going on, what you're saying, what you're feeling. And that's where that mental and emotional piece really comes into place, of being aware. If you're sad a lot, for example, if you're feeling sad a lot, if you're feeling angry a lot, it's not about judging it. Accept it for what it is, because it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's there to wake you up to something that you can learn, or to be able to move through something. So if we can look at it and approach our life that way, I mean, not only do our bodies speak to us, but our emotions and our thoughts really do a good job of getting our attention as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Dr. Asha, thank you so much for being on today. We could keep talking because I know that we could go on and on about this. But thank you so much for being on today. I so appreciate you. You guys can connect with Dr. Asha here at the bottom, all of her links. I am absolutely certain she would love for you to reach out to her with any questions, even if it's about, holistic well-being, if it's about chiropractic, if it's about mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, this conscious, the subconscious, whatever that is for you. If you have questions, reach out and ask. She would be more than happy to speak with you. I just know it. And again, thank you so much for being on today. It has been amazing.
Thank you so much, Hope. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. I have to say, I love that you're inspiring and helping people out there through your show. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. All right, you guys, we will see you on the next one.